I never thought a dress would change everything between us. But there I was, standing in front of my mirror at 7 in the morning, second-guessing absolutely everything about my life choices, while staring at this emerald green dress I'd bought on impulse 3 months ago and never worn. The tags were still on it. I'd hidden it in the back of my closet like it was evidence of something I wasn't ready to admit. The thing is, I'd been going to the same gym for almost 2 years, same time every morning, 6:30, like clockwork, and for the past 8 months, I'd been working out with Maya. We'd started as just 2 people who happened to need a spotter on the same days, but somewhere along the way, we'd become friends. Real friends. The kind who texted each other terrible memes at midnight and knew each other's coffee orders and showed up when the other person was having a bad day. Except I'd started having these thoughts. These feelings that made my stomach flip when she laughed at my jokes or when her hand would brush against mine when we were both reaching for the same weight. I'd catch myself watching the way her ponytail swung when she ran on the treadmill, or how her face would scrunch up in concentration during a difficult set, and I'd have to look away because my heart would start racing in a way that had nothing to do with cardio. I'd been trying so hard to ignore it, to tell myself it was just admiration, just friendship, just anything other than what it actually was. But then last week, Maya had mentioned this work thing she had coming up, some fancy charity dinner her company was hosting, and she'd said, completely casually while we were both dripping sweat after a particularly brutal leg day, that she wished I could come with her because at least then she'd have someone fun to talk to instead of having to network with boring corporate people all night. And I'd laughed it off, made some joke about not owning anything fancy enough for that kind of event. But she'd gotten this look on her face, this soft smile, and said, "I bet you'd look amazing dressed up. I've only ever seen you in workout clothes and those paint-stained jeans you wear on weekends." That comment had lived in my brain rent-free for 7 entire days. I'd replayed it so many times I could hear the exact tone of her voice, see the way her eyes had lingered on me for just a second longer than necessary. And maybe I was reading into it. Maybe I was seeing what I wanted to see. But something about the way she'd said it made me buy this dress. This stupid, beautiful, completely impractical dress that I had absolutely no reason to own. It wasn't like I was invited to her work event. It wasn't like this was a date. We were just gym buddies, friends. That's all we were. But I put the dress on anyway that morning. I don't even know what possessed me. We were supposed to meet at the gym in an hour, and instead of putting on my usual leggings and sports bra, I was standing there in this dress that hugged every curve, that made me feel feminine and vulnerable and terrified. I did my makeup, which I never did before the gym. I let my hair down instead of pulling it back. My hands were shaking when I texted her. "Running late. Meet you at the coffee shop next to the gym instead. Need caffeine before we work out." Her reply came back almost immediately. "Sure. See you in 30. I almost changed. I must have reached for my workout clothes 5 different times. But something stopped me every time. Some voice in the back of my head that sounded suspiciously like my best friend telling me I needed to stop being such a coward about my feelings, that I needed to know, one way or another, if Maya saw me as just a friend or if there was something more there. The walk to the coffee shop felt like the longest 10 minutes of my life. Every person who glanced at me made me hyper-aware of how different I looked. I kept tugging at the hem of the dress, wondering if it was too much, if I looked ridiculous, if Maya would think I'd lost my mind. She was already there when I arrived, sitting at our usual table by the window, scrolling through her phone. She was wearing her standard gym outfit, black leggings and a gray tank top, her dark hair pulled back in that high ponytail I'd come to associate with her. She looked up when the door chimed and I watched her face change. Her eyes went wide. Her lips parted slightly. Her phone nearly slipped from her hand before she caught it. And then she just stared at me. Not for a second, not for a polite moment, but really stared, her gaze traveling from my face down to my shoes and back up again in a way that made heat rush to my cheeks. "Hi," I managed, my voice coming out smaller than I intended. She blinked, like she was coming out of a trance. "Hi, wow, you look... wow." I laughed nervously, tucking a strand of hair behind my ear. "Is that good wow or bad wow?" Good, she said immediately, then seemed to catch herself. Really good. I mean, you always look good, but this is different. What's the occasion? I slid into the chair across from her, grateful to sit down because my legs felt unsteady. No occasion. Just felt like wearing something different today. To the gym. She raised an eyebrow, a smile playing at the corners of her mouth. Well, I was thinking maybe we could skip the gym today, I said, the words tumbling out before I could stop them. Do something else instead. Her expression shifted into something I couldn't quite read. Surprise, maybe. Interest. Like what? I don't know. Breakfast? There's that new brunch place that opened downtown, the one you mentioned wanting to try. She was quiet for a moment, and I could see her thinking, processing. Then she said, "Are you asking me out?" My heart stopped, just completely stopped, because there it was, the question I'd been dancing around for months, laid out plain and simple between us. I could backtrack. I could laugh it off, say I just meant as friends, preserve whatever this was that we had, or I could be honest. Maybe, I said softly. Would that be okay? She didn't answer right away. Instead, she stood up, grabbed her gym bag, and for a horrible moment, I thought she was leaving, that I'd misread everything, ruined everything, destroyed the best friendship I'd had in years. But then she reached out her hand to me. "Come on," she said, "where are we going?" "I need to change first. I'm not going to brunch with you looking like that while I'm dressed for deadlifts. Give me 20 minutes. The relief that flooded through me was so intense, I almost started crying right there in the coffee shop. I took her hand, let her pull me up, and tried not to think about how perfectly my hand fit in hers. We walked to her apartment, which was only a few blocks away. The whole time, she didn't let go of my hand. We didn't talk much, but the silence felt charged with something electric, something that had been building between us for months and was finally being acknowledged. She lived on the 3rd floor of an old building with creaky stairs and plants on every windowsill. I'd been there before, for movie nights and meal prep Sundays, but it felt different now. Everything felt different. "Make yourself comfortable," she said, gesturing to the couch. "I'll be quick." But she paused at her bedroom door, turned back to look at me. "That dress really is incredible on you, by the way. I couldn't stop looking at you in the coffee shop. I'm honestly not sure how I'm going to focus on food at brunch." She disappeared into her room before I could respond, leaving me standing there with my heart racing and my face burning. I sat down on her couch, pressed my hands to my cheeks, and tried to process what was happening. Maya liked me. Actually liked me. All those moments I'd thought I was imagining, all those lingering looks and casual touches, they'd been real. She emerged 15 minutes later in a sundress I'd never seen before, soft yellow with tiny white flowers. Her hair was down, falling in waves past her shoulders, and she'd put on makeup too. Just a little, but enough that I could tell she'd made an effort. "You look beautiful," I said, because it was true, and because I was apparently done hiding how I felt. She smiled, shy and pleased. "So do you. I meant to say that first in the coffee shop, but I kind of forgot how words work for a minute there." We laughed, and some of the tension broke, shifted into something warmer and easier. Brunch was perfect. We got a table on the patio, ordered too much food, and talked the way we always did, except now there was this undercurrent of possibility running through everything. Her foot brushed against mine under the table and stayed there. She reached across to steal a bite of my French toast and let her fingers linger on my wrist. Every moment felt like a question being asked and answered. "Can I tell you something?" she said, after we'd finished eating and were just sitting there with our coffee, neither of us wanting the morning to end. "Anything. I've been wanting to ask you out for months, since probably March, if I'm being honest, but I kept talking myself out of it because I thought maybe I was reading things wrong, and I didn't want to make things weird between us." "March?" I repeated. "That's when we started doing meal prep together." She nodded. "You came over and you'd brought all these ingredients, and you were so excited about this new recipe you'd found, and you had this little smudge of flour on your cheek, And I remember thinking that I wanted to kiss it off, and then being completely terrified by that thought. I had the same realization around the same time, I admitted. Different moment, but same panic. What was your moment? You remember that Saturday when it was pouring rain and the gym was closed for maintenance? Yeah, we got coffee instead and ended up talking for like 3 hours. You told me about your sister's wedding and how happy you were for her, but how you'd been feeling lonely lately, and you had this look on your face, sort of wistful and sad, and all I wanted was to hold your hand and tell you that you didn't have to be lonely, that I was right there. I paused. That's when I knew I was in trouble. She reached across the table and took my hand, laced our fingers together. Why didn't you say anything? Same reason you didn't. Fear, uncertainty, not wanting to lose you. You're not going to lose me, she said firmly. Even if this doesn't work out the way we hope, you're not losing me. But I really hope it works out the way we hope, I said. Me too. We left the restaurant and walked through the park nearby, still holding hands. It was a gorgeous day, warm and sunny with a light breeze that kept it from being too hot. Families were out with their kids, couples were having picnics, dogs were chasing frisbees. Normal weekend things. Except nothing felt normal because Maya kept looking at me like I was something precious, something she wanted to protect and cherish. We found a quiet spot under a big oak tree and sat down in the grass. She leaned against the trunk and I leaned against her, her arm around my shoulders, and we just existed there together for a while, watching the world go by. I'm really glad you wore that dress, she said eventually. Yeah, I'm glad you took the risk. I don't know how much longer I could have gone on pretending I only wanted to be your friend. I tilted my head back to look at her. Was it obvious? How I felt? She laughed softly. To me, yeah, but I think that's because I was looking for it, hoping for it. I was so scared this morning. I almost changed 5 different times. I'm really glad you didn't. Her fingers traced absent patterns on my shoulder. Although I have to ask, what made today the day? Why now? I thought about how to explain it. I think I just got tired of being afraid, and maybe I realized that not knowing was worse than knowing and having it not work out. At least if I told you, if I showed you, I'd have an answer one way or another. And now you have your answer. Now I have my answer. She was quiet for a moment, then said, "Can I kiss you?" My breath caught. Yes. She shifted, turning so she could see my face properly. Her hand came up to cup my cheek, her thumb brushing across my skin in a way that made me shiver. She looked at me like she was memorizing every detail, like this was a moment she wanted to remember forever. And then she kissed me, soft and sweet and perfect, her lips warm against mine. It was gentle, almost hesitant at first, like she was still making sure this was real, that I wanted this as much as she did. But when I kissed her back, when I reached up to tangle my fingers in her hair and pull her closer, it deepened into something more certain, more real. When we finally broke apart, we were both breathless and smiling. She rested her forehead against mine, and I could feel her laughing quietly. What? I asked. I've imagined doing that about 1,000 times, and it was still better than I thought it would be. Only 1,000? I'm pretty sure I'm in the tens of thousands at this point. She kissed me again, quick and light. We have a lot of time to make up for. Yeah, we do. We stayed in the park until the sun started to set, talking and kissing and making plans. Real plans. A proper date next weekend, dinner, and a movie. Meeting each other's friends as girlfriends, not just gym buddies. Figuring out what this new version of us looked like. And later, when she walked me home, she kissed me goodbye on my doorstep like we were in some romantic movie, soft and lingering, her hands on my waist, my arms around her neck. "Thank you for being brave today," she whispered against my lips. "Thank you for catching me." "Always," she promised. I watched her walk away, waited until she turned the corner and disappeared from sight, then went inside and immediately collapsed on my couch, overwhelmed by everything that had happened. My phone buzzed with a text from her. "Already missing you. Same time tomorrow? We can actually work out this time, or we could skip again and get breakfast. I'm flexible." I smiled and typed back, "Breakfast, definitely breakfast, but I'm wearing workout clothes this time." "Wear whatever you want. I'm going to be looking at you either way." I fell asleep that night with my phone in my hand and a smile on my face, thinking about emerald green dresses and the courage it takes to show someone who you really are. Thinking about Maya and the way she'd looked at me in that coffee shop like I'd stolen her breath. Thinking about how sometimes the scariest thing is also the best thing, and how glad I was that I'd been brave enough to find out. The dress is still hanging in my closet. I wore it to her company event 2 weeks later, and the way she looked at me that night in front of all her coworkers made it clear to everyone exactly what I was to her. Not her gym buddy, not just her friend, but hers. Really, truly hers. And she was mine. Total char count, 16,847.